It's got a little bit better sound than that. Alright, pulling myself up here. Hey, all you sequel addicts out there. This is James Curtis, a.k.a. the Pork Chop Express, head writer and host at IHEARTSEQUELSblogspot.com. Here to do a little roundtable. Just like last time, I'm doing this at work during lunch hours, so I've got co-workers doing this with me. And today we're going to be talking about all the Batman movies, or whatever comes up in this conversation regarding Batman movies that were released theatrically. Yeah, that's it. So, to my immediate right, this is Kyle Thompson. And right across from me, that's Jeremy Stevenson.
Hello.
Kyle, tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name's Kyle. I've been a fan of Batman all my life. I saw all of them in the theaters.
Really?
Yeah, starting with the Tim Burton ones back in the
Did you see the Adam
late
West one in
80s.
the
Yeah, you missed the
theater?
Adam West one.
I did.
Even
miss
I'm not
the
that
Adam
old,
West,
man.
But I definitely watched that a lot growing up.
You're right.
Yeah,
Okay.
loved that movie.
And you're an actor.
I am.
Are you currently doing anything?
Not right
As
now.
far as stage plays or anything?
Yeah.
Right now? Nothing right now. In between
No.
gigs.
Right.
Right on. And Jeremy, where are you from? I still don't even know that either. You're from
From Texas originally.
from Texas originally.
Yes. The Houston area.
Okay, but are you from Michigan? I mean, not from Michigan, but did you spend time in Michigan?
My family's from Minnesota, so I go there
That's
a
what it
lot.
is. Okay, I knew it was the Midwest. Sorry. I don't know everybody, man. I wish I knew everything about everybody. So from Texas, a little
Then
bit of
moved
Minnesota, moved
Right.
here. And you've been in LA how long now?
7 years.
Really, that long?
Yeah. Since 2005.
You've only been working here for how long?
Since November?
Okay, so
So-
almost a year.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I get this feeling every time somebody shows up here, they show up and start here right after they move to LA. Like so many transplants. How long were you in LA?
A little over 6 years now.
Okay, so give us a little. Okay, so Jeremy, give us a little background about yourself.
I also was born in Houston, but I grew up in Florida.
Okay,
Been out here for about 6 years now.
right on.
Yeah.
Okay, and what do you? I know you because you work here, so you're clearly every time I talk to you, I know you're a music geek.
Yeah.
But is that your background? Like, where did you go to school for?
Music business.
Music business.
Yeah, I went to school in Denver actually.
Okay,
At University of Colorado, Denver. They have a music business program.
and you went to school for
Acting.
acting.
Yeah.
Okay, so did you get your degree for performance?
I did.
Okay. I still don't have a degree in shit. I don't have a degree in anything. I'm from LA.
It means
sort
you
of,
save
more
a
or
lot
less.
of money.
Right.
Yeah, apparently so. That's what all I keep hearing is about the debt that people are paying off. Guys in their
Right.
40s who are still paying off that
Yeah.
debt. That's crazy. That's insane. So, Jeremy, what about you? So he's been a Batman fan since forever. So you, how old were you when the Tim Burton one came out? You're young.
The first one, I think I was 2 years old.
Oh,
You
Jesus.
saw that in the theater?
Yeah.
Oh,
I don't remember it, but I was there.
What about you?
I mean, I grew up on the Adam West ones. I think. What year did the first one come out?
The Tim Burton was 89, summer
So
89.
I was like 7, going on 8.
Okay. So you are younger than me.
Yeah.
There was something you said recently, and I was like, Jeremy's not my age. There's no way. We're at least 4 years apart.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're about 7 years old in 89. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Saw that in the theater too.
Okay.
And I remember seeing the second one in the theater, and there was like a little kid in the
Yeah,
theater.
I
I was
actually
probably
remember
like
that
10 or 11. I was like,
What the hell is this little kid
I was
doing
like, what
in
is
here?
this little kid doing here? And I'm like,
I was 6.
there's some like, or maybe it was the first one. I just remember there was like some dark scenes.
Yeah.
There's some pretty brutal stuff in all
Yeah.
the Batman movies.
Yeah.
Even in the ridiculous, like, well, not so much in
Batman. Robin.
Batman and Robin. There's still people
Well, there-
dying and
yeah.
shit. You know what I mean? But it's the
Well, the
first
movie
two.
itself was murder.
Yeah, it was.
No.
It's a pain. Okay, has everybody in here seen all of those in the theater? So you saw both Tim Burton's,
I
both
saw
Joel
the
Schumacher's.
first. I didn't see Batman Begins and Dark Knight in the theater. I watched
Okay.
it as like later.
After.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I've seen all the Batman movies.
Okay, and then you've seen everything.
Yeah.
The Nolans, the Burtons, the Schumachers, all in the theater.
Yeah.
I'm in the same boat.
Okay.
In fact, I've got my favorite. That was one of the first things I was going to get into next was, you start with how did you get into Batman, but eventually you sort of find yourself at a point where you go, this is my favorite Batman movie. And my favorite Batman movie is kind of a cheat because my favorite Batman movie I saw in the theater was the Batman Mask of the Phantasm.
I forgot, that's the one Batman movie I haven't seen.
The Batman animated film.
I used to watch the animated series.
Right, I'm a huge fan of that. But I saw that in the theater. I can remember going to see that, like, I was in Phoenix during Christmas time, and there was fuck all to do. I was like 13 maybe, if that. I think that would have been 92, so I would have been like, or 93. I'm sorry. Yeah, that would have been like 93. So there wasn't anything to do, and I went and saw that.
Which one?
The Batman Mask of the Phantasm.
That was later.
No, it was like 92, 93. Because I can remember my sister at the same time I'm watching Batman, she's in the theater like right next door watching Beethoven. So that'll give you an idea of how old the Batman Mask of the Phantasm is. Because the series started, the series got picked up not too long after the first Batman Tim Burton movie. It was like 89, and then the series starts I think like 91. Batman Returns, the second Tim Burton film, is like summer 92. So there, and it was like the stopgap between the airing of the TV show and then the movie, the tie-in to the TV show. So that's my favorite one.
For some reason, I thought the Mask of the Phantasm was like after like the first round of live action stuff.
I was kind of thinking
it was sort of like in between
95, 98.
Yeah.
95 was when the first Joel Schumacher film came out, the Batman Forever. So, all right. So, mine's Mask of the Phantasm. What do you? You got a favorite Batman movie now?
First one, Adam West.
The Adam West Batman movie. See, I love that film. Yeah, I love that movie too.
So brilliant.
Yeah, I think it's great.
Like we were talking yesterday about the Dark Knight Rises, that there's like plot holes in it.
Mm-hmm.
They explain everything in the original Batman. Of course, they just pull it out of thin air, but they always make sure to like.
There's always some logic. Yeah. It's their goofy like Dadaist like cartoon logic.
The helicopter's crashing. All of a sudden, they land at like at the rubber convention.
Oh yeah,
he was like, "Oh yeah, I spotted it from the corner of my eye."
Right, that's like the whole joke. Is there's always something to tie back into. Like my favorite, of course, the obvious gag from the Batman movie was the shark repellent.
Yeah.
Like they've got so much shit on them in their utility belts. They actually even have shark repellent.
They like climbs out, hand me the shark repellent, Robin. And it was like he goes to the writers like octopus repellent, shark repellent. And like, there's all this crazy stuff, and he sprays it and it just explodes.
That's pretty amazing, dude. Because I don't know. I know people who love the Batman TV show and that Batman, the Adam West movie, but I don't know anybody who would like rep that film for their favorite Batman movie.
Well, I just think that whole style of writing is just like in a league of its own. Like, it's like I know, like I mean, I like the newer stuff too. It's just there's that one just like
it's pop art. It's something else entirely. Like the guy who did that.
Like,
I
don't know. I just kind of like that because it like cracks me up.
Yeah. Did you watch a lot? Did you watch any of those like? Any of like the Dino De Laurentiis movies? Like, did you ever watch Flash Gordon, the old Flash Gordon movie with the Queen soundtrack, and like Barbarella?
After watching Ted, I have to go back and watch it.
You should, but I think you'd specifically like. There's like 3 movies that Dino De Laurentiis produced. That's like that one, Barbarella with Jane Fonda, and there's an old movie called Danger Diabolique, which is an old John Philip Law. Anyway. Like, Barbarella and Danger Diabolique were both based on European comic books. And then, of course, Flash Gordon's based on, like, an old movie serial kind of comic strip thing. But they all have that same feeling and pace, and even some of the writers and creators that worked on the Batman TV series made those movies. So it's total pop art. Nice. It's all big, vivid colors. It's very tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah, I love the colors.
You should go back and watch those. That stuff's a lot of fun.
I just wish somebody would like bring that writing back.
Yeah, there's nobody. That's the thing. Like I think I've made this case before that there's not a lot of more movies now tend towards the Christopher Nolan or like the post Jason Bourne, where it's like everything has to be super serious and super realistic and grounded in reality, and you get very few films like one of my favorite movies from a few years ago was the Speed Racer film. Which is not like reality at all, but that's kind of the point. And it's like the old Batman movies or these pop art films where there's no semblance of reality, but they create these really vivid, crazy universes.
I felt that in some ways that's a little more like comic booky, like
yeah,
it's more of escapism, I guess.
Right, and a lot of people use that as a pejorative. They don't want those films. It's like they don't you feel like growing up as a nerd, you're being lambasted for liking comic book stuff. So now you're always looking for people, or at least most of the fanboys I know, they're looking for some kind of validation. And so you get these serious-ass Batman movies, which I like them too, but...
They're like, they kind of transcend like the comic book. It's
yeah,
like,
and that's
it's a blockbuster. It's not a comic book movie so much as it is like an action film.
Right, exactly. It's so serious. And then you've got, like, for me, that's why I like the Mask of the Phantasm, is because just like the old Batman animated series that it comes from, it's that perfect balance of, like, the really over-the-top cartoonish elements of, like, the Joker and the Riddler and all these really wild characters in Gotham. But it's also can be very serious and emotional, and there's, like, a real heart to it. What about you? What's your favorite of the Batman movies so far?
I think I would have to say Batman Returns.
Okay, that's my number 2 favorite Batman movie.
That's probably my number 2 as well.
Okay.
Michelle Pfeiffer and Danny DeVito just
are amazing. Again, it goes back to that heart thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, Michelle Pfeiffer's a way better Catwoman than...
way better.
Way better. I will say this, though. The one thing I feared the most about Dark Knight Rises was Anne Hathaway.
Me too.
And I was pleasantly surprised. Her performance was good. The character... we'll get into the writing of that stuff in a bit, but as usual, the writing is kind of crap for a number of reasons. But she was way better than I thought she was going to be.
I thought she was just going to be really annoying, but she, like...
I think she usually is.
She kind of...
I just thought she wouldn't be... She never has, in any of her other performances, come across as a character who can be like strong and seductive and you know what I mean?
I think she's usually too pleasant.
Yeah, far too pleasant. And sometimes they use that in a very particular way. Like, if you've seen Brokeback Mountain... Like, have you ever seen Brokeback Mountain? Or did you
I saw it a long time ago. I don't really
like, her whole thing is she's supposed to be this sort of very pleasant, ignorant, sort of middle American. You know, that's kind of the way that she's supposed to be played throughout the film. It's contrasted in a very particular way because, obviously, she's married to Heath Ledger in the film.
Right.
So she doesn't know that her husband's gay and just totally fucking escapes. Not Heath Ledger, sorry, Jake Gyllenhaal. She just totally escapes her. And that's kind of the point of the character. You're using that to your advantage. For her to be this sort of plain, wholesome kind of character, anyway, sort of. But okay, so why Batman Returns?
Really, the villains. The part where Danny DeVito bites the nose off of that guy. That was crazy.
Yeah.
Right.
And then, plus I had Christopher Walken in it, so that's always a plus.
Right on. Yeah, no, I love. It's funny because you know the top billed villains are Catwoman and Penguin in Batman Returns, but the real villain in the movie is Max Schreck, is the Christopher Walken character, and I love that. I love Christopher Walken.
Yeah, you kind of like forget that he's like the villain in that.
Everything
that and then you watch it like, oh yeah, this guy's.
Well, because everything that's all the wrongdoing, sort of, most of the wrongdoing that happens in the film is because of something he does.
Yeah.
She becomes Catwoman because she stumbles upon his crap, his corporate espionage and all this shit. And he throws her off the balcony, or out the window, sorry. And then with the Penguin, he's already pretty malevolent, and he's trying to use Max Schreck, but it's Max Schreck and his manipulations and his fuckery that kind of winds up making the Penguin go really off the deep end. So it's really like this very human bad guy that you can point to in Batman Returns, which makes it most interesting. Because the villains in the film are more compelling than Batman at times in the second one.
Yeah.
I feel like
a lot of Batman movies are.
They always are, yeah. But a lot of people always make fun of that one, saying that's where it's like Tim Burton was way too fascinated by the villains, and I'm just kind of like, that's like all those movies, especially like when you get to this newest one.
Yeah.
To The Dark Knight Rises.
Batman's like barely in it.
Batman's barely in. He's barely in Dark Knight.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's the only of all the Nolan movies. The only time he's the central focus is the first film, is Batman Begins, and then from there it's just that universe that they've built. So that's funny. It's three guys sitting in a room, all fairly young, but not super young. You would think that one of us would have picked a Nolan film, because everybody's like crazed about these films, right? I mean, that's kind of where, but it seems like most of us are leaning more towards what would be considered the comic bookish elements of it, right? That's kind of where we're at. So, all right, I know you were saying that your Nolan film, the only one you really liked so far, like really liked, is Batman Begins.
No,
well,
Dark
you're
Knight.
your favorite.
My favorite of his is Dark Knight.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought you were really into Batman Begins.
No, I think only like the seen like once or twice. The Dark Knight was definitely my favorite of his.
Okay.
I just love Heath Ledger was just such a
Yeah.
great performance, and then I love the way they did the whole Harvey Dent Two-Face
Right.
character. Like, it started off as like, you know, the like super good guy, and then like then
Right.
he went through his transformation. That's what I feel like I wanted to see more of that in the new one. There was like they didn't really like go into the character background for like Bane and Catwoman as much as like I was
No, they
expecting.
didn't.
Like, he just shows up, he's got the mask on his face. Like,
Right. Well, the whole thing about that is that there's this big it's not really a twist if you know anything about the Batman universe. There's this whole twist where they're building up this idea that Bane is Ra's al Ghul's kid, but it's clearly not. It's going to wind up being, Miranda Tate is actually Talia al Ghul. So I think that's one of the main reasons is that he's supposed to be this man of mystery. You get some information. You get the how badass is he kind of background where you find out he's been excommunicated from the League of Shadows. But it's all a smokescreen. Yeah. He's not really running the show. She is and all that stuff. But yeah, there's a propulsion in those new films where even with a character like the new characters where you're supposed to feel a little bit more about them, you get such little character out of like what would eventually become Robin. Right?
Yeah, that part was kind of cheesy.
I thought it was kind of funny. Okay.
I mean, it was like, oh, real. I mean, I knew that like they were like kind of building him up to become like a Robin, or maybe like
a
take
Batman
over
too.
the next
Right.
Batman, like after Bruce Wayne retires. But like, oh, I like your first name, Robin.
Yeah, you should go with your full name.
That was dumb.
That was kind of cheesy. That was.
I mean, I knew I like I like the idea of him taking the reins or whatever they were trying to hint at.
They're trying to come full circle, which is what's most interesting. Like Christopher Nolan has said, this is his Batman story and his alone.
And he said it's his last one.
And so it's like his last one. So he's trying to
sequel.
do this basic cycle of here's the beginning of Batman and here's where he ends. And I like that it's a complete story arc, the way like a miniseries would be. You've got a complete story arc, but and I like the way it ends. I had this big fear that even my girlfriend who hasn't seen this movie is basically asking me, "Does Batman die?" And there's this whole thing of like, "Is Batman gonna die? Why is Batman gonna die?" And I was just so everything that's been cut that you see in the marketing perpetuates this notion that this is literally the end of Batman. Yeah. And I didn't want to see that. It just doesn't seem in keeping with the spirit of the character whatsoever.
There was a part of me that was like kind of
Nolan.
wondering if like that whole like the end, if that was supposed to be like a fantasy sequence where Alfred like sees them, like, oh, maybe
it's like a dream.
Yeah, there's a lot of like movies that have those kind of endings where it's like, oh, it's a happy ending. Oh wait, is that just a fantasy? Like,
but it actually is the happy ending.
Yeah.
What do you think? So do you like the Nolan movies in general?
I do like them a lot. I actually like this one the best.
Okay.
Of the three.
Okay. Why? I'm not being a dick. I'm just
no,
serious.
no.
Like, why?
I just thought the first one was good. You got a lot of backstory about Batman, but I thought the pacing was kind of slow.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the second one, I really loved it at first, but the more I watched it, the more I kind of realized it was just because Heath Ledger was so good at the Joker. Yeah. The actual movie was really not that great. It had a lot of problems.
2 and 3, the new one and Dark Knight, are just loaded with plot holes.
Yeah.
Major plot contrivances where you're just like, there's too many leaps of faith. I mean, I'm surprised that so many people love these movies and consider them perfect because there's just huge leaps in logic in both of the films, but definitely in The Dark Knight. Yeah, there's lots of problems with that. I find myself in the same boat where The Dark Knight suffers from the same problem that the first Batman, Tim Burton Batman, does, where you've got a guy who's so good as the Joker that all you tend to focus on is how amazing he is, that you forget about how problematic all the rest of the movie is. And so, I mean, I do like Two-Face, and they did a good job with Aaron Eckhart.
Yeah.
But I felt like for Two-Face, like they established him as Harvey Dent, but by the time you got to Two-Face, they ran through that story so quickly. Like, the last act with him as Two-Face is so rushed, you're just like, really? Okay. Like, both this movie and the second film felt like they could have been longer, which for me, I don't even want to see so many movies are 3 hours long and they don't need to be. You get like 3-hour Transformer films. But now, like, with both of these Dark Knight films, I feel like there's so much more I want to see.
Yeah, that was, like, a lot of times I get kind of antsy with, like, those long movies. But, like, this last one, like, it kind of, like, didn't really, like I kind of went by pretty fast. It wasn't, like...
Oh, it's so fast.
Yeah, there's so much going on.
It's so propulsive.
Yeah.
Every scene is its own thing. It reminds me, it's very... Every scene is so compartmentalized. It's almost like reading a comic book.
Yeah.
It's cut. It's very fast-paced.
Yeah.
So, you were saying, the new one. You like the new one best of the three so far.
Yeah. I just thought the story was good. There was so much going on. It introduced us to a lot of new characters, and I don't know, I just thought it was a really good way to end it.
I was actually thinking kind of the same thing. It was a good way to at least end this trilogy. I don't know how much I like it. I felt like there were some things I didn't like. I was actually blown away, like, even the people that you usually rely on for fantastic performances, I thought most of the people like Michael Caine and Morgan Freeman and Gary Oldman, maybe because their characters are so well established, but they were like sleepwalking through their parts. They didn't have to do shit. They were just being... So maybe it's just because they're so damn comfortable with it. But I thought some of the acting was pretty whatever. But I really liked Anne Hathaway. One of the first things that really bothers me about the new one, though, is I still have a problem with this idea that Batman's been out of commission for like 8 years. It just seems weird to me. After everything that happens at the end of the Dark Knight film, you don't feel like that after the second film there's going to be this 8-year gap where there's no Batman. You feel like it's going to be the opposite, where it's supposed to be Batman goes super underground. He had this little window of acceptance, kind of, but now he has to be completely hunted and chased, but he's still going to be doing what he was doing. And instead you get 8 years later... It felt out of character.
Wasn't there a comic
Batman's
book like story arc where he was like gone for 10 years?
There was the Dark Knight Rises, yeah. They're not the Dark Knight Rises, the Dark Knight Returns.
Yeah.
There is that, but that was at a point where he had been Batman for so long. Like here's the thing: if you look at Nolan's film, he's only Batman. Well, he's only really Batman for like 3 years. He's in Batman Begins. He just started. He'd been Batman for a little bit. Dark Knight takes place like a year and a half after that, so that's like a 2-year stretch in the first two films. Then there's the 8-year gap, and then he's Batman for the new one. But with Dark Knight Returns, the comic book, he's like an old man. He's like a super old man when he retires, and he's even older when he comes back. So it just felt weird that he would... I don't know. The Batman, and this is just my take on Batman, but you'd think Batman would be so much more dedicated to what he wanted to do. But again, it's all Nolan's idea of how to make a Batman movie from beginning to end. He wants to tell one story and one story only. But I still feel like the 8-year window is kind of it's not a terrible thing, but it just feels sort of out of character for Batman. I will say that I do like the happy ending. I do like the happy ending. It seems like Batman's a guy who's got plans. You know, there's that whole thing of, like, as crazy as Batman is supposed to be, sort of, kind of, he's always got some kind of plan up his sleeve, and him dying just doesn't seem, again, in keeping with the characters. So I feel like everybody wanted to see Batman die, though. Everybody I talked to,
expected it.
I think they were, either they expected it or they wanted to see them. Like, they thought that was the inevitable conclusion.
Maybe it
for
was
that
just kind of
character.
like a running joke. Oh yeah, Batman's gonna die, because it seems like that's how all these trilogies end now, or something.
Yeah. The one thing I did like is that there actually was this uncertainty of what was going to happen to Batman. So many franchises now, like with Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings and all this stuff, everybody kind of knows how it's going to end, if you've read the books or something like that. This is the first trilogy in a long time where it feels like the first Star Wars trilogy. Like, I'm sure you guys, you're both way too young for this. I'm not that much older than you, but I can say that I saw... I know I saw Empire when I was a kid, but I was only like 1 year old. But I was 4 years old when Return of the Jedi came out, so I can remember going to see Jedi in the theater. My sister was like born right before Jedi came out, so I have very specific memories of that. But this is the first time where you're, since like Star Wars, where you're not sure, and it's great that Nolan played that uncertainty card, like he wasn't sure what was going to happen in the Batman films.
I just saw this thing yesterday, the girl who played Talia's mom, like she was, they kept her role secret, like she wasn't even allowed to put her role on IMDb until the movie was released.
Oh, really?
Yeah, to keep that whole part secret, a mystery.
Right. There's no keeping secrets. There was already like, it's almost like no keeping secrets now, though. Even for someone like Nolan, because he tried to keep the Talia al Ghul thing secret, and that had already kind of leaked.
Well,
like some people knew about.
When they first announced that she was in it, they put her on IMDb as Talia al Ghul, and they had to take it down and change it.
Oh shit! I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's funny. Well, there's very little surprise nowadays, but you can still get some surprise out of it. You know, I wasn't entirely surprised that Batman might kill himself in the Nolan films to sacrifice himself, but at the same time, I was pleasantly surprised that he wasn't dead at the end of the film.
I knew they weren't gonna like end it like that. It's just when they like flies off in the set says like that's not how it's gonna. Yeah. There's gonna be one more epilogue. There's gonna be an epilogue, one more scene where Batman like comes back.
Something's gonna happen.
Yeah.
I didn't know they were definitely gonna set up the Robin line, but that was pretty. I like Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and I like his character in the film. And he actually would make a good Robin, but it was the way they kind of handled it where you just go,
oh, come on.
And that's the funny thing about these Nolan films, too, is they are so serious, but the cheesy moments are super cheesy.
It makes them stick out.
It makes them so stick out like a sore thumb. Like, excuse me. I apologize to the people out there listening or watching this. Yeah, because they're so serious, because they're so heavy-handed, when those moments do happen, it's much more eye-roll inducing. You know what I mean? I was thinking about something after the fact. Like, this is the first Batman film, this series is like the first film that feels like it wasn't informed by Batman pre-1985. Like, if you follow the comic books, everything that happens in this film, or in this trilogy, is all stuff that Nolan took from really current versions of Batman. There's nothing Bob Kane in there. There's nothing like the what they call the Bill Finger Batman. There's nothing from the original television series. There's nothing from even the Burton films. Like the distinction between now and then, everything is this is the totally postmodern Batman. So, and I don't know if you guys, do you guys read comics?
Not
since you were a kid.
I read X-Men, but that was it.
But not Batman.
Like I can't help but notice we're talking.
Oh yeah, that
Batman
reminds me. Okay, I was going to point this out. I wasn't even planning to wear this. This is not like a bias thing. This is not some kind of partisan stance or something like that. I just happened to grab a Marvel T-shirt this morning and kind of completely forgot about it. I don't do that thing where I have to choose sides between Marvel and DC. I will do that thing where I choose favorite superheroes, but I don't have a favorite.
Well, I remember when I did read comics, I definitely read a lot more Marvel than DC. I like Batman. That was like probably the only DC comic I actually read some of.
Well, Batman feels more like a Marvel comic character.
I think that's
like Marvel Comics was always supposed to be about ordinary people in extraordinary circumstances, kind of thing. Like starting with Spider-Man. Like that's the whole thing with Stan Lee making Spider-Man, who's a kid who's got normal problems just like everybody else, but he's got superpowers. And the mutants are obviously this. It's kind of the same thing. Daredevil is like the perfect, like, Marvel stand-in for a Batman, where he's this guy who's got this sense of justice, total vigilante. He's kind of a mirror opposite though, because he's poor, grew up poor. Wayne grew up rich, but they even both have very Catholic, Gothic things going on in there. So anyway, but Batman doesn't feel like he belongs in the rest of the DC universe, where you've got these really larger than life and much more alien characters to start with people like Superman and Green Lantern and Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman's not human. Superman's not human.
Yeah.
Wonder Woman's like a goddess. Superman is a fucking alien. The Green Lantern is a normal guy, but he gets his powers from a ring that were given to him by aliens who are protector of like the universe. Like it's
relatable.
It's not. Yeah. It's not very grounded. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I could see why Batman, like the Marvel kids, would read Batman. You know what I mean? I could totally see that. So, anyway. But the newest films, like, the idea of Batman is there from the beginning, from, like, the Bob Kane stuff, but the newest films feel like they take all their cues from anything that was written by Frank Miller, Alan Moore, Jeff Loeb, so the kind of stuff you're talking about, where it's like The Dark Knight Returns. Batman Begins is totally Batman Year One, which was pretty much all Frank Miller. Frank Miller wrote that. Frank Miller wrote the version of the Joker you see is more like what you see from Alan Moore with The Killing Joke. The Dark Knight, if you guys go and read, there's a series that this guy Jeff Loeb created called The Long Halloween, and it's like it's like a 12-issue arc, and every beat that's in The Long Halloween is pretty much exactly what they did with The Dark Knight. They even lifted entire scenes and dialogue from Long Halloween to make The Dark Knight. So it's all new stuff. But what I'm saying is like all those newer books are informed by a very dark, gritty, postmodern, the kind of stuff that Frank Miller and Alan Moore are doing. So there is none of that pop, fun kind of, there's nothing completely outlandish about the world that they're living in. The second film in particular looks like a Michael Mann movie. You know what Michael Mann's stuff is? He's the guy who directed Heat and Collateral and all these films. It's all crime. They all look like that. Like Dark Knight, when I first started watching, I remember being in the theater for The Dark Knight, and the opening scene is the scene where those guys go in to break into the bank. It doesn't look like a Batman movie. It looks like Heat. Yeah. It looks like a big heist movie.
Didn't Nolan say that was his inspiration?
Yeah, totally. His inspirations
are... Batman feels more like an old-fashioned kind of detective than like Batman. The way he talks is like...
He sounds more like a cop.
Yeah.
He doesn't... Because the original Batman is more like a detective. He's more like Sherlock Holmes. But with what's going on in these new Nolan films, he doesn't have to do a lot of detecting. He just has to kind of figure out, keep an eye on the city, and kick some ass. Mm-hmm. There's not a lot of detecting going on in these films. Plus, the other thing, too, is everything that happens in these new films just kind of happens to Batman. He doesn't have to dig very deep. Yeah. Everything just kind of happens to him. Yeah. So he's just the center of the storm, essentially. So, anyway. All right, so let's get into something where we actually have some serious bullshit to get to talk about. Where do you guys stand on the Joel Schumacher movies? I know you the Batman and Robin films. You were making fun of that.
I actually like them.
You do.
They're entertaining.
But they're really stupid, but they're light and they're fun.
Right.
Well, no, like the last one I think was trying to be more like the
was trying to be more like the Batman
movies, but like it just didn't translate. It was.
Oh come on! Arnold Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze is the funniest.
Well, it's like when I first moved to California, and it was on like HBO or something. I was watching, I hadn't seen in years, and it got to like Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'm looking up like, this is my governor right now.
That was the best, going to the DMV and seeing the giant picture of Arnold Schwarzenegger on the wall.
It's kind of what it had to feel like when Ronald Reagan was governor the first time around, because he was like a cheap B movie actor. Yeah. So, that's fucking funny. Yeah. I'm so used to seeing living in California. You're so used to having the idea of like movie stars are so fucking important.
Yeah.
There's almost no disconnect, and with Schwarzenegger it was even more so because he was such a massive movie star.
Yeah.
Such a massive movie star. But yeah, I think the problem with the Schumacher films is that they have to take their cues. I don't know if it's because of what was happened with the Tim Burton movies, but it's like they have to take their cues from the Burton films, so they have to maintain a certain level of darkness and seriousness. But then it doesn't really work with the goofier shit that Schumacher wants to do.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well, like Batman Forever was kind of like a transitional.
Yeah.
Like it was trying to be dark like Tim Burton, but it also had like more of a humor element.
Right.
Like,
and that's my problem with like my.
And that's where it went with, and then it kind of like developed
totally
more
goofy.
And Batman and Robin.
Yeah, the Batman Forever, the first one. My biggest problem with that film is I hate that it's very early on in the film, but I hate this turn that happens where Tommy Lee Jones' character goes from being what seems like he's going to be a very cool kind of dark villain, kind of like the way Harvey Dent should be, and then almost immediately he starts cackling and you realize he's just doing really like a bad version of the Jack Nicholson Joker, and you're just like, it kind of feels very Yeah, it's off. It's like they want to try and do the dark stuff, but they're doing the kooky and the crazy and the.
Jim Carrey was great.
Jim Carrey's great, but he's great because he's supposed to be amped to 11. Whereas Two-Face, there should be a contrast, but instead they're both running around.
I liked that version of Two-Face.
Did you?
Yeah.
I can't get into that. I don't know what it is.
I
love his makeup.
Better than Jim Carrey.
I love his makeup. I love the design of the character, and I love that he's got the angel on his and the devil on his shoulder. He's got the two. He's got the Drew Barrymore and the Debbie Mazar thing, going on. I love that stuff. There's little moments that really do work, but there's some of it. It's just like everything is so cranked to 11 at a certain point where I'm just like,
It's exhausting to watch it.
It is. It's an exhausting experience. It's been a long time since I had watched it, but I saw it on, of all things, I think PBS ran it one night. They do this like.
I remember last time I watched Batman Forever.
I hadn't seen it since I was very young, but I've written an article on my site, on this site, on the IHEARTSEQUELS thing, where I was talking about, for all the problems I have with Batman Forever, the best thing about it is, like, I really love the character Nicole Kidman plays. She's, like, the best written female character in any Batman movie, in the sense that she feels very real. She feels very rounded. She feels like a well-rounded character. She seems very grounded. She doesn't have a problem with her sexuality. Yeah. She's in love with the Bat, but she's not conflicted about that. Yeah. She's not a vapid airhead. Like, I always hated the Vicky Vale character in the first film. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And one of the main reasons the whole thing, Alfred letting her into the Batcave, pisses everybody off is it's just like, he fucked her, but that's it. It doesn't, it's like, why are we supposed to give a shit about this character? There's nothing interesting about Vicky Vale. Kim Basinger's performance doesn't help, but the performance, or the character is written is just kind of crappy. And then Catwoman is a great character, but what's great about her is the perversion. Yeah. Starting out as this meat character who goes completely off the deep end and winds up, in S&M gear and really playing that. Again, so it's not. It's very specific ideas about gender roles. You've either got the completely meek, docile, mousy woman, or you've got the sexually vivacious, kind of sinister dominatrix type. With the Chase character, the woman that Nicole Kidman plays, she's like a genuine person. Yeah. It's like she's actually pretty well written. And then the reason I thought about this is because all the women in Christopher Nolan's films tend to be very perfunctory. They're not well written. They're all like plot points. Yeah. So by the time Maggie Gyllenhaal dies in Dark Knight, you're just like, you don't really care as much because the way she's written in that second film, all the goodwill you have towards that character is stuff that happened in the first film. Mm-hmm. Not so much because of Katie Holmes' performance, but because of what she stands for and what she means to Bruce and everything that's established in the first film. In the second film, they don't give her a lot to do. Maggie Gyllenhaal doesn't have a very great performance. She can't transcend this kind of perfunctory role. And then she just dies. She's like a total plot machination. Yeah. You know what I mean? And Christopher Nolan's films are all kind of like that. The women in them are they're stepping stones. They're not exactly characters.
What does that say about him?
Well, here's the thing. I've said this before. Like, Christopher Nolan is seen as this very intelligent filmmaker, and I think he is. But he makes guy movies. He just makes really brainy guy movies, like the new, like Inception, and then the beginning of Dark Knight Rises. Both of those, the entirety of Inception and the beginning of Dark Knight Rises remind me of James Bond movies. He makes James Bond movies. You know what I mean? But he makes them smart. He makes them clever. He makes them so they're not just the same old thing that we all kind of grew up with. He just always has these little twists on them. But his movies are always about male characters. Like Memento is about a guy who's hell-bent on revenge because his wife is dead and he's got short-term memory loss. The Prestige is about two guys whose wills just cannot let the other person go. Like, they have to keep taking revenge on each other. Batman is clearly a very masculine. It's all masculine shit that's going on. With Inception, he's Leonardo DiCaprio's character is this bruised guy who basically caused the death of his wife and all this shit. It's just, they're hyper masculine films, but they're super smart hyper masculine characters. Films. And then he has a tendency to cast actresses who aren't exactly the strongest presence. So you get someone like a Maggie Gyllenhaal who's not very, she's just not a strong enough actress to. She's a good actress, but she can't transcend those trappings.
Yeah.
Or Ellen Page is another one. Like, she's good as this kind of wide-eyed innocent in Inception, but she's not a strong enough actress for her to get past this kind of this audience surrogate that she's supposed to be. So anyway, but I digress. Batman Forever. The one thing I will say about Batman Forever is I love the female characters in Batman Forever. So yeah. But then you get into Batman and Robin, and Poison Ivy is basically like the same thing that happens with Catwoman and Batman Returns.
And then you have Alicia Silverstone too.
Oh god, Alicia Silverstone is so bad.
So bad.
She's so bad. She's so
Yeah.
bad in that movie. But everybody's
really
pretty bad. Like I thought George Clooney was a pretty good Bruce Wayne. He's got a real presence that seems more like what Bruce Wayne ought to be.
Yeah.
But
that's how he is in real life.
Yeah, he is
like
kind of Bruce Wayne. But the serious stuff that happens in Batman and Robin is so kind of gooey and sentimental. It doesn't fit how like kind of ridiculous the rest. Like the whole thing with like Alfred's dying basically, and Alfred's niece is hanging out because and it's just it seems so weird for there to be such a dour kind of Bruce Wayne story when you've got George Clooney playing Bruce Wayne.
So, out of all the movies, what are your favorite Bat vehicles?
Not the new fucking Batwing. I hate that thing.
It wasn't even the Bat. The
The
Batwing from, was it Batman Returns?
Batman Returns is killer. The second one.
The Batwing, right?
Yeah,
the
Bat.
Yeah, that one was like so much cooler than whatever the hell that was.
The new one suffers from the same problem that the new Transformers do, where there's no distinction. They just like these
like
mechanical monsters that just look cobbled together to make it look like it's supposed to be real and functional. But instead, what you get is something where you're like, you couldn't pick that out of a lineup.
Yeah,
it's not like when you see the Millennium Falcon in Star Wars, you go, okay, that might not be the most practical ship on the planet, but it looks fucking
like
cool.
The Batwing looked like the Batman logo, basically.
Yeah, it looked. You could pick.
You're like, oh, Batman flies out. You see this thing in the movie, you're like, what is that from Total Recall or something? Like,
yeah. There's no character to it whatsoever.
And they had just like no Batmobile. They had like the little motorcycle thing.
I don't know. The one thing I love about the Batwing and this, or the Bat, which cracks me up, is when did Bruce Wayne like learn how to dogfight? Right? He's like doing serious dogfight maneuvers. Like towards the end, there's like heat-seeking missiles following him, and he does that scene where he flies over a building, inverts, and then drops down. He's like fucking Maverick in Top Gun.
Maybe in the time that's what he was doing when he was escaping from the Lazarus Pit and coming on his way back to Gotham City.
That was another one. That's a massive plot hole.
I bet there's like a deleted scene where like on the way back he like goes to like a military Air Force Academy or something and learns to dogfight, then goes back.
It's like he's got the Matrix in his head. He's just able to pull up. Let me know how to fly, and there it is. But yeah, there's like...
Well, it was autopilot, wasn't it?
No, that was the thing. And
well,
even if it was
He didn't have autopilot.
He didn't have autopilot. Remember, that was like the whole gag of how he was able to escape the nuclear blast.
That's right.
But the other thing, too, is like... Autopilot doesn't work that way, even now. So, even if it was like autopilot, that's not autopilot. What happens in that movie can only be done if the Bat had like artificial intelligence, like that movie Stealth. Or something out of like a Japanese anime. Like that plane must have its own brain to be doing those maneuvers. Where the fuck did Bruce Wayne learn how to do that? And how quickly did he get back from wherever the pit is? It's not the Lazarus Pit.
Okay.
The Lazarus Pit in the
that was like a
the Lazarus Pit in the cartoons and the comic books is basically where Ra's al Ghul would go to basically rejuvenate because he's supposed to be like 600 years old.
Yeah. Right. I thought that's what they're like trying to like make it
kind of emulate.
Yeah.
Yeah, but okay. Here's a question. We were both trying to figure out where the hell do you think that pit is in Dark Knight Rises?
I have no idea. Like I don't even know what continent it's on.
It looks like the Middle East. It looks like Macedonia.
It looks like the town in Aladdin.
Yeah, it does. It looks like the Middle East. So how? Not even like. First of all, he gets out of the pit, and then the next thing you know, he's in Gotham. Yeah, which is pretty remarkable. But what I want to know is not how quickly did he get home. How did he get home? Yeah, he has no money. He wasn't even like Bruce Wayne anymore.
Well, even though it's like Bruce Wayne, like Bruce Wayne shows up like all disheveled in another town, that's gonna make news. Somebody's gonna notice that.
Yeah, someone's gonna notice that Bruce Wayne is there.
It's like,
yeah.
And so like somehow he's, I mean, and how the town's in quarantine.
Yeah. The town's in quarantine.
Like somehow there's like the whatever the reserves or whatever the National Guards like watching the whole like How they're like, oh, he was just swim under water. Like,
I mean, you could have that. You have that thing where you're just like, I don't want everything explained to me, but there's a certain point where you go, you got to give me something. I could, in my mind, I could go, I'm sure Batman has some kind of underwater pod thing that he can. You know, they hit a lot of bases to cover certain things, so that it would call back to the movie.
How long were the cops and everything underground?
3 months.
Oh, like it was supposed to be like 3 months.
Food.
They did show that. They
showed some of the food.
But still, like, where did that come from? Like,
well, there's also like, how much food did they put down there? Because they said the entire city. There's 3,000 cops down there.
Yeah,
there's 3,000 cops down there. How much food can you shovel down a fucking?
Especially in a town that is shut off from the rest of the world. There's got to be a limited food supply in that city, and like, and then there's all the citizens that aren't cops there, and there's like all of the thugs. Like, these people are gonna be eating somehow. Like,
I thought it was really funny. For me, it seems really unrealistic. Maybe it just speaks to Nolan's idea of what law and order is, but it seems completely unrealistic to me that the town gets shut down, the criminals essentially take over, but nobody does anything about it. We have to wait for the cops to crawl out of the rubble, and it's only the cops who pick up weapons to fight these guys. I have a hard time believing that, because when you look at those scenes, it's clearly not regular citizens who are just going ballistic. It's clearly the criminals. One of my favorite scenes in that new film that cracked me up is I love how they keep bringing Cillian Murphy back as the Scarecrow. Yeah. So when he comes up as the judge, I was like, awesome. I love that he's got that sense of continuity. He has to have those little moments in that universe. But you look at that court, there's not like regular citizens who are railing against what's going on there. It's just criminals, and then you've got like the only real representation of citizens is the kids and the priest, and then Matthew Modine's limp dick police chief. Those are the only real characters in all of Gotham. So in Gotham, apparently, you've either got bad guys, cops, and then the weirdos. Then the weirdos. That's all there is in Gotham, apparently.
That's like all the